You know that feeling, right? Like you go to the movies, the sweeping orchestral music swells, the hero faces down this insurmountable evil empire, and you just walk out of the theater feeling completely invincible.
Oh, absolutely. Your blood is pumping. You're like ready to conquer the
Yes,
world.
exactly. But then, well, then you wake up the next morning and you are just trying to survive a completely ordinary Tuesday.
Right, yeah. The mundane reality.
Yeah, you're trying to get a screaming toddler into a car seat or sitting in traffic dreading some budget meeting, and suddenly all that epic world-conquering inspiration completely evaporates.
It really does. I mean, the dissonance there is just jarring. The gap between the epic mythology we love to consume on a screen and, the actual reality we have to navigate every single day, it can feel completely unbridgeable.
It totally does.
And it leaves a lot of people feeling like their daily lives are somehow trivial, just because they lack that massive cinematic scale.
Which is exactly the gap we are jumping into today. So welcome to the deep dive, everyone. For you listening right now, we are pulling together this fascinating synthesis of philosophy, psychology, and some very grounding practical advice.
Yeah, it's all centered around this incredible concept of culture, courage, and the hero's journey.
Exactly. And our mission today is really to figure out how to build a resilient inner architecture. We're going to explore how legendary sports coaching, ancient parables, the cognitive science of willpower, and, believe it or not, even the narrative structure of Star Wars all weave together.
It sounds wild, but it really does all connect.
It does. And it gives you this blueprint for handling your daily frustrations and actually emerging from them transformed. I am just so excited about how these sources take these massive, sweeping concepts and shrink them down into highly actionable advice for your everyday life.
That's the core objective here, for sure, taking the epic and making it, functional. And the best place to start dismantling this idea actually isn't in a philosophy classroom.
No, it's not.
It's on the football field with Bill Walsh.
Yes. The legendary head coach of the San Francisco 49ers. I mean, the guy who won 3 Super Bowls and built an absolute dynasty in the 1980s.
Right, but what makes Walsh so fascinating isn't just the winning. It's his underlying philosophy, which runs completely counter to how most of us are taught to operate.
Yeah, he insisted that the wins were always the absolute last thing to arrive.
Which is such a radically contrarian idea, especially today. I mean, we live in a society that is just hyper-obsessed with the scoreboard.
Oh, 100%.
We obsessively track outcomes. We measure quarterly productivity. We want the promotion, the ring, the tangible proof of success. But Walsh essentially took that traditional results-obsessed pyramid and just inverted it.
He flipped it completely upside down.
Exactly. His core mantra was that the score takes care of itself, provided you focus entirely on the culture.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because I feel like corporate America has really hijacked the word culture.
Oh, definitely. It's become a total buzzword.
Right, so we aren't talking about like a motivational poster in the break room or forcing everyone to play ping pong.
Far from it. In Walsh's framework, culture is the accumulated weight of thousands of micro-choices.
Micro choices, I love that.
Yeah, it's the invisible behavioral seeds planted months or even years before a championship game is ever played. It's the patience a coach shows a struggling player in film study.
Or like the exact standard held during practice.
Exactly. The uncompromising standard of excellence that's upheld during some drill on a rainy Tuesday afternoon when absolutely no one from the press is watching.
Wow.
It's the tone of voice used when correcting a mistake. It is an absolute obsession with the process.
So it's basically like an iceberg.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, like we only ever celebrate the tip, the Super Bowl rings or the big promotion, but the massive invisible ice beneath the water, the stuff holding it all up, that's the culture.
That is exactly it.
But let's turn this inward for a second for you listening. If that is how a football dynasty is built, what does it mean to build a culture within yourself?
That is the ultimate question, right? Translating Walsh's philosophy to the individual level means taking a very hard, honest look at your own inner standards.
The stuff nobody sees.
Right. It's about recognizing that your behavior in your most unguarded, mundane moments dictates the ultimate trajectory of your life.
Because it's easy to be great when everyone's watching.
Exactly. Building a culture within yourself means constructing a psychological architecture that holds its shape under pressure. If your inner standard is avoidance, you will inevitably withdraw when things get difficult.
So the small stuff is actually the big stuff.
Walsh is essentially proving that the quality of our ordinary choices manufactures our extraordinary outcomes.
Okay, I see the value in that, absolutely. But And here's where I'm going to playfully push back a little. Applying a professional football coach's intense discipline to, like, my living room on a Thursday night feels really daunting.
It does feel like a lot, yeah.
So if the goal is to build an inner culture that transforms our outcomes, what map do we follow to actually get there?
Well, the funny thing is the map has actually been hiding in plain sight for centuries. We see it beautifully codified in this concept of the hero's journey.
Ah, yes, the classic framework.
Right, which has been explored deeply by writers like Stephen Pressfield and story consultants like Christopher Vogler. And Vogler famously used this archetypal scaffold while working at major studios.
Like pointing out that George Lucas used this exact blueprint for Luke Skywalker in Star Wars.
Exactly. But it extends way beyond sci-fi. It's the exact same invisible spine found in Dorothy's journey in The Wizard of Oz, and it's baked into the oldest myths in recorded human history.
Walk us through the actual structure of it, just briefly.
Sure, so it's remarkably consistent across cultures. A person starts out living in the ordinary, comfortable world, but eventually something disrupts that comfort.
A call to adventure.
Right. And it could be a literal call, or a sudden job loss, a health crisis, or even a new relationship. The person is forced to leave their comfortable baseline behind and cross a threshold into the unknown.
Where they immediately just face a bunch of trials, right? They get pushed to their absolute physical and mental limits.
Exactly. And those trials serve as their ultimate education. If they survive the ordeal, they return home. But, and this is the crucial mechanism, they don't just return to their old life.
They come back changed.
They return fundamentally transformed, and they bring something of immense value like wisdom or an elixir, a new perspective back for the community they left behind.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, but also a bit intimidating. I mean, I'm just trying to get through a Tuesday meeting. I'm not trying to blow up the Death Star.
Right, right.
Isn't the hero's journey just a bit too epic for everyday life? Like,
Yeah.
applying this to a spreadsheet error or a household argument feels a little melodramatic.
It does sound melodramatic if you view the hero's journey as like a set of instructions you have to go out and manufacture.
Oh, interesting. So it's not a to-do list.
Exactly. What Pressfield argues is that this framework is descriptive, not prescriptive. It is simply a description of what is already happening to your psyche anytime you experience human growth.
So it's just the natural process of changing.
Right. You cannot develop courage while remaining perfectly comfortable. You don't deepen your capacity to love without risking profound loss.
Because the trials aren't literal dragons.
Exactly. They're already sitting there in your Tuesday meeting. John F. Kennedy actually summarized this underlying truth perfectly. He said, "Do not pray for easy lives. Pray to be stronger men."
Wow. Pray to be stronger men. So he isn't asking for the friction of life to stop.
No, because wishing for an absence of friction is essentially wishing for an absence of growth. The goal isn't to avoid the hard thing, but to become someone equal to it.
Okay, so let's take JFK's challenge and bring it right down to earth. What does a hard thing look like in the unglamorous, often messy reality of a normal day?
Well, Mother Teresa offered a really brilliant grounding metric for this. She said, if you want to change the world, go home and love your family.
Oh, wow. Which sounds like this beautiful cross-stitched pillow sentiment, but in daily practice, it is incredibly demanding.
It really is. And Ryan Holiday unpacks this dynamic perfectly in his Meditations on Parenting in The Daily Dad. He takes this epic concept of the hero's journey and literally drops it right onto the kitchen floor.
Yeah, he paints this scenario that I think every parent or caregiver knows intimately, dealing with a child who is genuinely physically overwhelming.
And not in a malicious way. The child is just being a child, loud, grabby, completely oblivious to cause and effect.
Right, they're screaming directly into your ear, spilling oatmeal all over the clean shirt you literally just put on for work, hanging off your back.
Cutting off your air supply?
Yes, and in that visceral moment, your absolute biological instinct is to push them away. Your brain is just screaming, give me some physical space.
But Holiday's demanding counsel here is vital. He argues that you must resist that deeply ingrained instinct. You cannot push them away.
Wait, really? But why? Because the shirt doesn't matter. Or because we're just not supposed to feel frustrated.
No, the frustration is entirely real,
Yeah.
and the shirt is definitely ruined. You don't push them away because of the mechanism of how a child processes the world.
Okay, walk me through that.
A young child cannot rationally understand why you need personal space. What they do understand, What they literally absorb into their developing nervous systems is the feeling of being physically rejected by their primary source of safety.
Oh, wow. And they encode that into their attachment patterns.
Exactly,
Yeah.
for the rest of their lives. So instead of succumbing to the reflex, you transform it.
So that's the micro trial.
That is the pivot. You gently unwrap their arms from your throat.
Yeah.
You make it a game. You turn that chaotic, overwhelming energy into connection.
Which is incredibly difficult. You are essentially running the hero's journey in miniature, choosing connection over self-preservation like 20 times before lunch.
Yeah, and that is Walsh's inner culture functioning in real time. But performing that pivot requires an immense amount of cognitive energy.
Which brings up a great analogy regarding the research on ego depletion by Roy Baumeister. Because this isn't just about trying harder, right?
Right, there's a literal physical cost to this kind of patience.
Yeah, so what does this all mean for our energy? Because willpower isn't just a metaphor, it functions exactly like a phone battery.
It really does. The mechanism here is fascinating. Every time you consciously override an ingrained impulse, like gently unwrapping those toddler arms instead of snapping, your brain literally burns through its glucose reserves.
So you only have one charge for the day and every decision drains it.
Exactly. By 2:00 p.m., your prefrontal cortex is physically depleted. That's why you are significantly more likely to lose your temper in the evening than in the morning. Your biological hardware is exhausted.
Man, that completely reframes the whole concept of self-compassion, doesn't it?
It does. It connects directly to recovery because you cannot pour from an empty vessel. If your battery is perpetually drained due to poor sleep, terrible nutrition, or just chronic stress, your physical ability to choose that generous, heroic response collapses.
So proper sleep, hydration, and food aren't just self-indulgence.
No, they are the essential biological infrastructure of love. If the well is dry, the ability to choose the generous response just completely falls apart.
Wait, hold on. I'm hitting a wall here. I need to flag a bit of attention for the listener because we just spent the last section talking about absorbing chaos with radical openness, right, leaning into the toddler's mess.
Right.
But then we have Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power. And he explicitly warns us to fear the power of infection. His advice is to run away from the chronically unhappy and unlucky.
Yes, he does.
Isn't Greene's advice to run away from toxic people totally contradicting Holiday's advice to lean in? Like, if my coworker is incredibly toxic, am I supposed to absorb their chaos to build my inner culture or run away to protect my battery?
It is a brilliant question, and untangling this contradiction is so important. The resolution lies in understanding the distinct difference between developmental chaos and structural chaos.
Okay, developmental versus structural. Break that down for us.
Developmental chaos is the toddler on the kitchen floor. They are actively learning how to navigate the world. Their messiness is a necessary biological part of their growth phase.
So it requires our patience.
Exactly. It deserves our radical openness. Structural chaos, on the other hand, belongs to the adult whose misery is a self-generated, entrenched pattern.
Oh, I see. So the coworker with constant workplace drama or aggressive self-sabotage.
Right. That's a chronic operating system.
Yeah.
And emotional states are highly contagious. Greene's warning is rooted in reality. You cannot save a drowning man if he is structurally determined to drag you under the water with him.
Because your battery is finite.
Exactly. You must protect the well of your willpower for the people who actually depend on you.
That makes perfect sense. And it really weaves in perfectly with some deep structural anchors like the Ten Commandments.
Oh, absolutely.
Historically, they're presented not just as cages or arbitrary rules, but as boundaries. They act as the containers that make genuine love possible, because without boundaries, your energy just spills everywhere.
It dissipates into the structural chaos, leaving nothing for the developmental chaos of the people who matter. Confucius actually offered a brilliant navigational tool for this.
Oh yeah, the 3 methods of learning wisdom.
Right. He proposed that reflection is the noblest method, imitation is the easiest, but experience is the bitterest.
And it is almost always that bitterest experience, getting burned by someone's toxic behavior, that teaches us who we need to love from a very careful, protected distance.
Yeah, it's the painful acquisition of boundaries.
So let's say we navigate all this successfully. We balance that radical openness for our family with strict boundaries against toxic forces. Where do we ultimately arrive? What is the reward at the end of the journey?
Well, the resolution of this is beautifully captured in a parable by Anthony de Mello called Homecoming. He tracks human development through 3 distinct shifts. The carnal, spiritual, and divine stages, right?
Exactly. Initially, in the carnal phase, we take the world entirely at face value. A tree is just a literal tree. Life is surface level.
But then you cross the threshold, face the trials.
And you enter the spiritual or seeking phase. Everything becomes complex. Trees are symbols. Everything is heavy with meaning. You're dissecting every interaction on your hero's journey.
But the divine stage, the enlightenment phase, has this fascinating twist.
It does. In that final stage, trees are just trees again.
Wow. Trees are just trees again.
The simplicity returns, but it's transformed. You haven't regressed. You've returned from the ordeal carrying wisdom. You re-enter the ordinary world, the kitchen, the commute, but you are fundamentally altered.
You see the mundane with luminous clarity? This really connects to Eckhart Tolle's concept of presence, doesn't it?
Oh, completely. When you survive the journey and return, you stop projecting anxieties onto the future. Gratitude just arises spontaneously. You naturally experience gratitude because you finally see the reality of the tree, or a quiet Tuesday morning for exactly what it is. So let me ask you this. Once you hit this stage where trees are trees again and you have this baseline of gratitude, are you just done? Do you get to just chill at the finish line forever?
I wish. But no, the human psyche doesn't allow for a permanent finish line. George Eliot articulated this brutal truth perfectly. It's but little good you'll do watering last year's crops.
Meaning, yesterday's growth doesn't irrigate today's challenges.
Exactly. You aren't done. Navigating the hero's journey yesterday doesn't grant you immunity today. Kierkegaard captured this ongoing risk when he wrote, "To dare is to lose one's footing momentarily. Not to dare is to lose oneself."
So staying comfortable is actually losing yourself. You have to continually summon the courage to step into the unknown again.
Right. Jack Canfield noted that everything you deeply want is sitting on the other side of fear. Simon Sinek reminds us that leaders are the ones who go first. They don't wait for perfect conditions.
And Buddha's foundational directive rounds it out perfectly. You have to vigilantly guard the mind. You are the gatekeeper of your own cognitive resources.
Because that sustained inner vigilance is the bedrock of everything. It precedes every single positive result in your life.
We have covered an incredible arc today. Just to recap for everyone, building an inner culture means stepping into the unknown. It requires aggressively protecting your energy from toxic forces while remaining radically open to the people who need you.
It's a constant balancing act.
It really is. Constantly replenishing your willpower, learning to see the ordinary world with transformed, grateful eyes, and then having the courage to wake up and do it all over again.
The Tuesday morning traffic is the same. But you have moved.
You have moved. Which brings us right back to the gap we started with, between the swelling music of a movie and your very real, ordinary Tuesday. So for you listening right now, I want to leave you with this final lingering thought.
Yeah, let's hear it.
If yesterday's growth doesn't water today's crops, and the hero's journey is something you have to actively repeat, take a look at the ordinary world surrounding you at this exact moment. If the trees are just trees again, what is the new unknown threshold you are secretly avoiding simply because you don't want to lose your footing? What happens if you take that step today? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.